Deep in the Star Wars galaxy, one name echoes through the centuries. A being whose wisdom and power became the stuff of legend. This is the story of Master Yoda. Born 900 years before the Battle of Endor, Yoda emerged from a species and a homeworld shrouded in secrecy. Throughout his entire life, he never revealed where he came from, maintaining an aura of mystery that only added to his legendary status. His species, ancient and rarely seen, remains one of the galaxy's greatest riddles. But what we do know about Yoda's early life speaks volumes about his extraordinary connection to the Force. As a youngling, his attunement to this cosmic energy was so profound that he was welcomed into the Jedi Order. Like all young Jedi, he faced the ritual known as the Gathering, where he obtained his Kyber crystal, the heart of what would become his first lightsaber. Under the guidance of Professor Huyang aboard the Crucible, young Yoda crafted the weapon that would mark the beginning of his journey. There are whispers and rumors about his early training. Some say one of his first instructors was the Hasalrian Jedi Master Nkata del Gormo, though like many details of Yoda's youth, these stories remain difficult to verify. What we do know is that by the age of 100, a mere adolescence for his species, Yoda had already achieved something remarkable. He had earned the rank of Jedi Master. What followed would become the stuff of legend. Over the next 8 centuries, Yoda dedicated himself to passing on what he had learned. The numbers alone are staggering. It's estimated that over his lifetime, he trained around 20,000 Jedi. Picture that for a moment. 20,000 warriors, peacekeepers, and guardians of justice, all shaped by the wisdom of a single master. But numbers tell only part of the story. Yoda's teaching methods were as unique as they were effective. He believed in allowing his students to discover answers for themselves, often waiting patiently for them to catch up to his insights. This philosophy would shape the Jedi Order for generations to come. His wisdom wasn't just about the Force or lightsaber techniques. Yoda understood something far more fundamental, that nothing and no one was perfect, but there was good or the potential for good everywhere and in everything. This profound insight shaped his approach to both teaching and leadership, making him not just a trainer of Jedi, but a true guide for the soul. As he rose through the ranks of the Jedi Order, eventually becoming Grand Master, Yoda's reputation grew, yet he remained an enigma. His distinctive speech pattern, his small size belying his immense power, and his peculiar mix of playful humor and deep wisdom all added layers to the mystery. Even his favorite teaching tool, a walking stick, began as a practical joke for his Padawans, leaving them wondering whether he actually needed it or not. But perhaps the greatest mystery of all was Yoda's incredible connection to the Force. His power wasn't just about lifting objects or wielding a lightsaber. It was about understanding the very nature of existence itself. He could sense events happening across the galaxy, feel disturbances in the Force that others missed, and see possibilities that most couldn't imagine. This is where our story begins, with a small green figure whose origins remain unknown, but whose impact on the galaxy would be immeasurable. Through war and peace, triumph and tragedy, Yoda's journey would become intertwined with the fate of the entire galaxy, a journey that would span centuries, challenge the very foundations of the Jedi Order, and ultimately help shape the destiny of the Force itself. While many know of Yoda's reputation as a legendary Jedi, it was in the role of teacher that his true greatness emerged. Within the halls of the Jedi Temple, his influence shaped not just individuals, but the very future of the Force itself. Long before becoming Grand Master, Yoda demonstrated an extraordinary gift for nurturing young minds. He frequently taught outside the traditional Master-Padawan relationship, working with all Jedi younglings before they were paired with their individual masters. In the temple gardens, a small, serene space became his favorite meditation spot, where he would often counsel troubled students and fellow Jedi alike. His teaching methods were revolutionary. During the gathering, an ancient ritual where younglings sought their Kyber crystals, Yoda's guidance went beyond mere instruction. When young Ahsoka Tano struggled to find her crystal, he shared a profound insight. Sometimes we find the most important things when we're not purposely looking for them. This epitomized his approach to teaching, focusing not just on the immediate lesson, but on deeper truths that would serve his students throughout their lives. The relationship between Yoda and his last Padawan, Count Dooku, illustrates both the heights and shadows of his teaching career. Their bond began in 86 BBY, and together they faced remarkable challenges, including a memorable encounter with a fearsome Terran Tatek on Kashyyyk. Yoda saw extraordinary potential in Dooku, considering him perhaps the best Padawan of his generation. Even when they disagreed, their sparring sessions became opportunities for understanding, with Yoda using these moments to help his student find inner harmony. Yet even the greatest teachers face heartbreak. When Dooku eventually left the Jedi Order in 42 BBY, it was a moment of profound disappointment for Yoda. In a gesture that spoke volumes about their relationship, when Dooku offered to surrender his lightsaber, Yoda allowed him to keep it, a decision that would have far-reaching consequences for the galaxy. The Grand Master's teaching philosophy extended beyond traditional combat training. He believed in allowing students to discover answers for themselves, often waiting patiently for them to catch up to his insights. His methods could seem unconventional, even playful at times. Fellow council member Mace Windu, for instance, never quite appreciated Yoda's sense of humor, which only encouraged the Grand Master to maintain it. These moments of levity served a deeper purpose. Through them, Yoda taught crucial lessons about perception and understanding. He understood that sometimes the most important teachings came not from formal instruction, but from unexpected moments that challenged his students' assumptions. In the training of younglings, Yoda was particularly attentive to their emotional development. He once found a frightened youngling named Gela Natai hiding in the temple garden, terrified of training remotes. Rather than simply telling her to overcome her fear, he used the example of a persistent frog trying to jump behind a waterfall to teach her about resilience and the importance of facing one's fears. His influence extended to the highest levels of Jedi training. As a member of the Jedi High Council, he worked alongside other legendary masters like Mace Windu and Ki-Adi-Mundi. Yet even among these equals, Yoda's wisdom stood apart. He never claimed to know everything, always remaining open to learning new lessons himself. This humility was perhaps his greatest teaching tool. Despite his immense power and knowledge, Yoda maintained that nothing and no one was perfect. He saw potential for good everywhere, even in situations that seemed hopeless. This perspective would prove crucial during the darkest chapters of the Jedi Order's history. The impact of his teachings rippled through generations. His lessons about finding peace amidst chaos, about the importance of emotional control, and about the true nature of wisdom would guide Jedi through countless challenges. Even his distinctive speech pattern became legendary, carrying profound truths in unexpected phrasings that forced his listeners to pay closer attention to his words. As war clouds gathered over the Republic, Yoda's role as a teacher became even more crucial. He understood that the future of the Jedi Order rested not just in the transmission of knowledge and skills, but in the preservation of wisdom and values that had sustained the Order for millennia. Even in the face of growing darkness, he maintained his commitment to teaching the next generation of Jedi, knowing that their understanding of the Force would be vital in the challenges to come. This was Yoda's true legacy as a teacher, not just the techniques he taught or the wisdom he shared, but the way he helped shape the very soul of the Jedi Order. Through centuries of dedication, he created a legacy of learning that would endure far beyond his own time, influencing not just the Jedi who learned directly from him, but countless generations to come. While Yoda's wisdom in the classroom shaped generations of Jedi, it was during the High Republic era that his leadership truly defined the golden age of the Jedi Order. As one of the Order's Grand Masters, alongside Pratre Veter and others, Yoda faced challenges that would test not just his combat skills, but his very understanding of the Force itself. In 382 BBY, a crisis erupted that would change the course of Jedi history. After the failure of peace talks between the warring planets Aram and Erono, Yoda found himself drawn into a conflict that went far beyond a simple planetary dispute. The Path of the Open Hand, a cult that distrusted Force users, had begun to move against the Jedi. In a meeting with Supreme Chancellor Greylark on Coruscant, Yoda sensed a disturbance beyond the immediate conflict, a shadow of things to come. This shadow materialized in what became known as the Night of Sorrow on Dalna. During this devastating battle, Yoda discovered something that he deemed too dangerous to record. The Path had developed horrifying weapons called the Nameless, creatures that could weaken Jedi, cause hallucinations, and eventually turn them to dust. In a decision that would haunt the Order for generations, Yoda chose to keep this discovery out of the Jedi archives, believing the knowledge too catastrophic to preserve. But the High Republic era wasn't defined solely by its conflicts. Aboard the Star Hopper, a Jedi Padawan academic cruiser, Yoda took what appeared to be a sabbatical from the Jedi Council. In reality, this journey allowed him to help train Padawans while following a different path the Force had revealed to him. During this time, he played a crucial role in the Great Hyperspace Disaster, lending his immense power to a Force network established by Jedi Master Avar Kriss to prevent a catastrophic collision. The emergence of the Nihil pirates presented a new threat to Republic peace. These marauders, led by Marchion Ro, proved to be more than simple raiders. During a rescue mission on Tremont 4, Yoda demonstrated why he was considered the greatest of the Jedi. When a massive piece of debris threatened the planet during an emergence, he coordinated with fellow Jedi Master Torban Buck to divert the largest pieces while sending Padawans to help on the surface. Yet it was during this crisis that Yoda made a discovery that connected to his past. Aboard a Nihil vessel, he found a mysterious purple artifact, one that would later prove crucial to understanding the threat they faced. But before he could investigate further, Yoda disappeared without explanation, accompanied only by Elder Tromak, a figure connected to the Path of the Open Hand. His absence was deeply felt throughout the Order. The Star Hopper's crew, particularly his former Padawan Kantam Sai, struggled with the uncertainty of his fate. Sai, who had experienced both Yoda's wisdom and his willingness to let students forge their own path, refused to believe their former master was lost forever. Even Padawans who had never met him directly, like Ramjomaram, felt the impact of his disappearance. When Yoda finally returned, it was during one of the Order's darkest hours. As Nihil forces attempted to steal a fleet of Republic vessels from Coronet City on Corellia, he emerged from shadows in dramatic fashion. Using the Force to halt a massive ship mid-flight and sweep away a Nihil war cloud, Yoda's return brought hope to his fellow Jedi and demonstrated that his powers had not diminished during his absence. But Yoda's return came with grave news. He had uncovered a connection between the nameless creatures he had encountered decades ago and the current Nihil threat. Accompanied by a mysterious hooded figure, former Jedi Knight Aslan Rel, who had spent years researching these creatures, Yoda warned that the way forward would be difficult. The secrets of the past, he realized, would be crucial to facing the challenges ahead. This period of Yoda's life revealed something profound about his character. Despite his immense power and wisdom, he understood that sometimes the greatest service to the light was knowing when to keep certain knowledge hidden. His decision to conceal the truth about the nameless, while controversial, demonstrated his understanding that wisdom sometimes meant carrying burdens alone to protect the many. Through victory and tragedy, through battles both physical and spiritual, Yoda's leadership during the High Republic era showed why he was considered legendary. His actions during this period would shape not just the immediate future of the Republic, but would echo through centuries to come, influencing decisions and events long after the Golden Age of the Jedi had passed into history. As the Golden Age of the High Republic faded into memory, storm clouds gathered over the galaxy. For Yoda, this period would bring personal losses that mirrored the growing darkness around him, none more devastating than the departure of his former apprentice, Count Dooku. In 42 BBY, Dooku appeared before his old master with shocking news. He was leaving the Jedi Order. This moment struck Yoda deeply. The significance of this choice would echo through the years to come, as Dooku's path would lead him not just away from the Jedi, but into the embrace of their ancient enemies. The galaxy itself seemed to be changing. Yoda, whose connection to the Force had always been profound, found himself troubled by what he couldn't sense rather than what he could. During meditation sessions in his favorite garden within the Jedi Temple, he struggled to identify something that felt hidden from his perception. This troubling sensation would prove to be the growing influence of the Sith, though Yoda wouldn't understand this until it was too late. It was during this period of uncertainty that Yoda's friendship with the Wookiees of Kashyyyk deepened. His diplomatic missions between the Wookiees and their Trandoshan neighbors earned him the ancient title Defender of the Home Tree. The Wookiees' appreciation went beyond mere ceremony. Yoda became a member of many Wookiee leaders' honor families and was particularly respected by the inhabitants of Kachiro. These connections would prove vital in the conflicts to come. Then came a moment that would change everything: the appearance of a young boy named Anakin Skywalker. When Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn presented the child to the Council, claiming he had found the prophesied Chosen One, Yoda's response was one of caution. Despite the boy's extraordinary Force sensitivity, Yoda sensed something that troubled him deeply: fear, anger, and emotional attachments that went against everything the Jedi stood for. The Council, led by Yoda's wisdom, initially refused to allow Skywalker's training. The boy was too old, his emotions too volatile. But fate had other plans. After Qui-Gon's death at the hands of a mysterious warrior on Naboo, the Council reversed their decision, though Yoda continued to harbor grave concerns about Skywalker's future. More troubling still was the identity of Qui-Gon's killer. The warrior had wielded a red lightsaber and demonstrated mastery of the dark side of the Force. After centuries of absence, the Sith had returned. Yoda, aware of the Sith's rule of two, knew that somewhere in the galaxy, another Sith Lord remained hidden. This revelation cast a shadow over everything, making the Grand Master question how such a threat could have escaped the Jedi's notice. The next decade brought more uncertainty. Thousands of star systems began threatening to leave the Republic, following the leadership of none other than Count Dooku. The political crisis deepened when someone attempted to assassinate Senator Padme Amidala of Naboo. The investigation into this attack would lead to a discovery that would shake the Republic to its core. While tracking the assassin, Obi-Wan Kenobi discovered something impossible. The planet Kamino had been erased from the Jedi archives. When Kenobi couldn't locate the world, Yoda helped him find it through meditation, but the implications were staggering. Only a Jedi could have erased the files, suggesting a betrayal from within their own ranks. What Kenobi found on Kamino was even more shocking. A massive army of clones, supposedly commissioned by Jedi Master Sifo Dyas, who had died around the time of the Naboo crisis. The cloners had created millions of soldiers, all grown from the genetic template of a bounty hunter named Jango Fett. As these events unfolded, Yoda experienced a disturbing vision during meditation. He heard the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn, who had been dead for a decade, and sensed Anakin Skywalker in terrible pain. When he discussed this vision with Mace Windu, neither could have known how prophetic it would prove to be. The pieces were falling into place for a conflict unlike anything the galaxy had seen in generations. The separatist movement was gathering strength. The mysterious clone army stood ready for deployment, and the dark side of the Force continued to cloud the Jedi's vision of the future. Yoda, who had witnessed centuries of galactic history, found himself facing something new. A crisis that threatened not just peace and order, but the very foundation of the Jedi Order itself. As war approached, the wise and ancient Master was about to face challenges that would test not just his incredible powers, but his most deeply held beliefs about the Force, the Jedi, and the nature of the galaxy itself. The dark times were rising, and not even the greatest of the Jedi would emerge unchanged. The Clone Wars thrust the galaxy's greatest peacekeepers into the role of generals, and none bore this burden with more wisdom than Master Yoda. While other Jedi led their forces from the front lines of countless worlds, Yoda's journey during this conflict would take him not just across the galaxy, but into the deepest mysteries of the Force itself. The opening battle of Geonosis demonstrated why Yoda was considered the most powerful Jedi of his time. After leading a clone army into battle to rescue trapped Jedi, he confronted Count Dooku in a duel that would become legendary. Their confrontation showcased Yoda's mastery of the Force. He casually deflected Dooku's Force lightning and telekinetic assaults before engaging in a lightsaber duel that pushed his former apprentice to retreat. But the most profound challenges Yoda faced during the war weren't on the battlefield. Near the conflict's end, while meditating in the Jedi Temple, he experienced something impossible. The voice of Qui-Gon Jinn, who had died years earlier. This wasn't just a vision. When Jinn demonstrated his presence by levitating Yoda himself, It challenged everything the Jedi Master thought he knew about death and the Force. The experience left Yoda distracted, even during council meetings. When he confided in the council about hearing Qui-Gon's voice, they met his claims with skepticism. Despite meditating together for an entire day, none of the other council members could hear what Yoda heard. Some, like Ki-Adi-Mundi, worried that their Grand Master had become vulnerable to Sith manipulation. Determined to understand these communications, Yoda underwent a dangerous deprivation ritual under the supervision of Jedi Dr. Rig Nima. Suspended in a liquid tank that brought him as close to death as possible without actually dying, Yoda received a clear message from Qui-Gon. He needed to go to Dagobah, alone and in secret. The journey that followed tested not just Yoda's power, but his very understanding of what it meant to be a Jedi. On Dagobah, the living Force appeared to him as fireflies, guiding him to a cave strong with the dark side. There, he witnessed a devastating vision of the future, a hooded Sith Lord slaughtering Jedi. Yet this was only the beginning of his trials. Guided by Qui-Gon, Yoda traveled to the mysterious planet that spawned the midi-chlorians themselves. Here he encountered the Force priestesses, ancient beings who agreed to teach him how to retain his consciousness after death. Their tests forced Yoda to confront his own dark side, challenging the hubris that even the wisest of Jedi could harbor. The visions he faced were deeply personal. He witnessed the Jedi massacre in the temple and encountered an apparition of Ahsoka Tano, asking if she would still become one with the Force after leaving the Order. This vision manifested Yoda's guilt over the path that led to her departure. But the true test came when he was offered an escape, a peaceful courtyard where his fallen friends lived on as full Jedi. Recognizing this temptation for what it was, Yoda overcame his attachments to those he had lost. The final trial took place on Moraband, the ancient Sith homeworld. Here, in the valley where ancient Sith lords were buried, Yoda faced increasingly challenging apparitions: a serpent, undead Sith warriors, and even the spirit of Darth Bane himself. Yet Yoda dismissed these illusions, demonstrating his unshakable connection to the light side. But it was in the temple execution chamber where Yoda faced his greatest test. Through a force bond between Yoda and Dooku, Darth Sidious created a powerful illusion to break the Jedi Master's spirit. The vision forced Yoda to choose between pursuing Sidious and saving Anakin Skywalker from a fatal fall. Without hesitation, Yoda chose to save Skywalker, even at the cost of letting Sidious escape. This final trial revealed something wholehearted about Yoda's character. Even at the height of his power, even with the fate of the galaxy hanging in the balance, he wouldn't abandon his principles or sacrifice an individual for the greater good. This decision, this moment of compassion in the face of darkness, proved his worthiness to learn the secret of immortality. Throughout these spiritual trials, Yoda continued to serve as a general in the Republic's war effort. He led clone forces in crucial battles, including the defense of Kashyyyk alongside his Wookiee allies. His tactical genius and force abilities turned the tide of many conflicts. Yet it was his inner journey that would ultimately prove most significant for the future of the Jedi. When Yoda returned to the Jedi Temple, he kept the true nature of his experiences secret, telling Mace Windu and Obi-Wan Kenobi that his journey had been uneventful. But the wisdom and power he had gained would prove crucial in the dark times ahead. He had learned not just how to preserve his consciousness after death, but had gained a deeper understanding of the Force itself. one that would allow him to guide future generations even after his physical form had passed away. In the final days of the Republic, the power of the dark side reached its peak. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine had accumulated unprecedented authority, and though the Jedi Council grew increasingly concerned, even their greatest master couldn't see the true extent of the approaching catastrophe. When Anakin Skywalker came to Yoda troubled by visions of death, the ancient Master's counsel reflected centuries of Jedi wisdom. Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. These words, though profound, would prove insufficient against the tide of darkness about to break upon the galaxy. The moment of revelation came with devastating speed. Chancellor Palpatine revealed himself as Darth Sidious, and in the chaos that followed, he executed a plan centuries in the making. Through hidden biological chips implanted in the clone soldiers, Sidious activated Order 66 with a simple command, turning the Republic's army against their Jedi leaders. Across the galaxy, Jedi fell by the thousands. Yoda, who had led and trained so many of them, felt each death as a physical blow through the Force. The pain brought even the mighty Grand Master to his knees. But there was no time for mourning. The clones were already moving to execute him. Commander Gree prepared to carry out Order 66, but Yoda sensed the betrayal an instant before it came. Moving with lethal precision, the ancient master who had spent centuries teaching peace was forced to strike down those who had fought beside him. This moment crystallized the tragedy. The greatest teacher of the Jedi now had to fight for mere survival. With the help of his longtime Wookiee allies, Yoda escaped into space, eventually rendezvousing with the few survivors who had escaped the initial purge. The revelation awaiting them at the Jedi Temple was even more horrifying than they had imagined. The sacred halls where Yoda had trained generations had become a charnel house. Security recordings revealed the unthinkable. Anakin Skywalker, now transformed into Darth Vader, leading the slaughter of his fellow Jedi, including the younglings. While Obi-Wan Kenobi departed to confront his former apprentice, Yoda moved to face Sidious himself. Their confrontation in the Senate building would become the stuff of legend, not just a duel between two masters, but a clash between the fundamental philosophies of light and dark. The battle began in the Chancellor's office, where Sidious immediately demonstrated why he had remained hidden for so long. His assault was brutal and direct, a display of dark side power that briefly overwhelmed even Yoda. But the Jedi Master recovered, matching the Sith Lord's fury with calculated precision as their battle moved into the Senate chamber itself. The two most powerful Force users in the galaxy hurling Senate pods like projectiles, their lightsaber strikes illuminating the vast chamber. When Sidious unleashed his Force lightning, Yoda caught it with his bare hands, creating a feedback loop of pure Force energy that exploded between them. But in that crucial moment, as the explosion separated them, Yoda came to a profound realization. The Sith had evolved, had grown in the shadows, while the Jedi had remained static, clinging to their ancient ways. This wasn't just a defeat in combat. It was the failure of an entire philosophy. Recognizing that victory was impossible, Yoda retreated. His escape through the maintenance tunnels of the Senate building marked not just his personal withdrawal from the fight, but the end of the Jedi Order as it had existed for 1,000 generations. On the distant asteroid base of Polis Massa, Yoda participated in one final act of defiance against the darkness. The twins born to Padme Amidala, Luke and Leia represented a new hope for the galaxy. The decision to separate them was made to protect them from their father's dark legacy. Each child carefully hidden from the Empire's grasp. Yoda's path led him to the swamp world of Dagobah. His arrival there in an E3 standard starship lifeboat marked the beginning of an exile that would last for decades. He chose his dwelling place carefully, near enough to the dark side cave to monitor its influence, but far enough to maintain the delicate balance he had always taught. Within a year, the harsh environment began to consume his initial shelter. As the lifeboat sank into the swamp, Yoda constructed a new home. This humble dwelling, so different from the grand halls of the Jedi Temple, would become his sanctuary and, eventually, the training ground for a new generation of Jedi. But for now, the greatest of the Jedi Masters waited in solitude, holding to the hope that someday the Force would find its balance once again. Deep in the swamps of Dagobah, the greatest of the Jedi Masters found wisdom in isolation. For decades, Yoda's daily life became a reflection of the very lessons he had taught: patience, humility, and attunement to the Force. Each year during the wet season, he would relocate to the Highlands, his temporary shelter a constant reminder of the Jedi Temple and the lessons learned from its fall. His exile was not merely a waiting game. Yoda's presence on Dagobah served a crucial purpose. His light side energy kept the dark side cave in check, maintaining a delicate balance in the planet's ecosystem. He would visit this cave every few years, understanding that confronting darkness was as important as embracing light. When Luke Skywalker finally arrived seeking training, Yoda initially concealed his identity, testing the boy's patience and prejudices. It was a teaching method he had refined over centuries, though now it served a more urgent purpose. The galaxy's last hope for defeating the Sith needed to understand that appearances could be deceiving, and that wisdom often came in unexpected forms. But Yoda harbored deep reservations about training Luke. The boy's impatience and emotional attachments eerily echoed those of his father. Only the spirit of Obi-Wan Kenobi convinced Yoda to undertake this final apprentice. Over the weeks that followed, Yoda pushed Luke to his physical and mental limits, not just teaching him about the Force, but challenging his very understanding of reality itself. When Luke rushed off to face Vader despite Yoda's warnings, it seemed history was repeating itself. But this failure would prove different. Unlike those that had come before, this one carried seeds of hope. Yoda had learned through centuries of teaching that failure was often the greatest instructor, and Luke's premature departure would ultimately lead him to face truths he needed to understand. As his own death approached, Yoda found peace in the knowledge he had gained through his spiritual trials during the Clone Wars. He had discovered the path to immortality, but more importantly, he had come to understand that passing on knowledge was more crucial than personal survival. His final words to Luke carried the weight of 900 years of wisdom. There was another Skywalker, another chance for the light to prevail. In his final moments, Yoda achieved what he had learned from Qui-Gon Jinn, the ability to retain consciousness after death. His physical form vanished as he became one with the Force, but his influence was far from over. Moments after his passing, he appeared to Emperor Palpatine himself, a reminder that some powers transcended even death. Through the Force, Yoda continued to guide those who followed in his footsteps. He appeared alongside Obi-Wan and the redeemed Anakin Skywalker after the Empire's fall, a triumvirate of wisdom watching over the galaxy's new hope. His teachings would echo through generations, reaching beyond the Skywalker family to influence Force sensitives yet to come. 30 years after his death, when Luke himself had retreated into exile following his own failures, Yoda appeared once more. With characteristic wisdom and surprising humor, he helped his former student understand what he had tried to teach him decades before. Failure was not something to fear, but rather the greatest teacher of all. By burning the ancient Jedi texts, though Rey had already taken them, Yoda demonstrated that the spirit of wisdom mattered more than its physical trappings. Even in the final battle against the returned Emperor Palpatine, Yoda's voice reached across time to aid Rey, telling her she had never been alone and encouraging her to rise in the Force. His words, carrying the weight of centuries of wisdom, helped give her the strength to finally end the Sith threat once and for all. The legacy of Yoda extends far beyond his 900 years of life. His teachings about the Force, about wisdom, and about the nature of failure continued to resonate. The small green master who once skipped across lily pads in the temple's meditation pond became the greatest teacher the galaxy had ever known. Not because he was perfect, but because he understood that imperfection itself was a path to wisdom. From his earliest days as a Padawan to his final moments on Dagobah, from his centuries of teaching to his eternal existence in the Force, Yoda's journey embodied the very essence of what it meant to be a Jedi. In the end, his greatest lesson may have been this: size matters not. Fear leads to the dark side. But most importantly, we are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters.